All right, here we go. Welcome in, everybody. It is Thursday, March 16th, 2023. This is the Slate DraftKings program. We take you up until 6 o'clock tonight. No Madden Sims this evening. Two-man show. Myself, Gary, and Thorne. We'll dive into as much as possible. I know we call this the sports version, so we can dive into plenty, as we normally do. We're going to dive into the NBA MVP betting market, how things have changed quite drastically. And over the last couple of days, a lot of chit chat about the award, really all the time, but a lot in the last couple of weeks, wherever you find your video clips and whatnot from the talking heads on certain TV networks. But it's changed quite a bit. It changed 2 days ago, and it's changed even more as of this morning and today. So we'll dive into that. Just quick chit chat. Who's deserving? Who do you think's going to win? It feels like those are two different discussions, right? We'll also dive into best ball. Gary's got some thoughts on MLB best ball with the season nearing. Terrible news, I may add, about Edwin Diaz. Just kind of a real bummer. Because I think we'll just spend a second on this. I feel like the WBC has had some legs, right? Some excitement. It feels like October, the way I don't know if it's a Fox Sports thing, the way they crank up the sound, the atmosphere. But some pretty awesome moments. It's just such a bummer what happened to Diaz.
Yeah, I mean, obviously for him, for the Mets organization, for Mets fans, it's a really, really tough pill to swallow. But as you said, I think it's equally sad that it's changing the context of the narrative and the conversation we're having about the WBC, because I, like you, have found this edition of the World Baseball Classic to be really, really fun. I think there's been some great games. There's been some really surprising results. You had even like Great Britain taking Mexico down to the wire. You had Colombia taking the States down to the wire in a game that each team needed to win to advance. The atmospheres in Taiwan and Japan have been absolutely incredible. So it's sad that we've now had to switch gears and we have, Mike Trout and Mookie Betts answering questions after the U.S. punches their ticket to the quarterfinals. And it's more about, hey, how do you guys feel about still playing in this tournament after what happened to Edwin Diaz? And, I think it says something that they were both like, look, you're also playing baseball in spring training. Like, this could have just happened in spring training. And again, it's not even like he was hurt throwing a pitch. He was hurt celebrating. It's just really, really crappy situation.
Yeah. And look, he just got a contract too. So that definitely, I think, helps his case to want to play, and not trying to make light of what happened, but that is a factor when guys are trying to figure out if they want to play. And of course, just for their pride. Right. So, that's a bummer from what happened last night.
I mean, I thought it was interesting. There was a clip circulating. I think the John Boy Media Network put it out, where they asked 6 Dominican players, like, what means more to you, the WBC or the World Series? And 5 of the 6 said, oh, playing for the Dominican, like 100%. And that's something we have to remember too. I mean, I'm not American, I'm Canadian, but Canada had similar problems to the States this year, recruiting some of their best pitchers for this tournament. Whereas a lot of the Latin American countries, Japan, just Cuba to some extent, had a lot easier time getting their top pitchers in. And it just means more to other countries. We just have to remember that.
Yep, for sure. And I think it just speaks to the excitement. And if you've been betting on it or playing, somehow competing, having some fun, having some skin in this competition, I think it's been good. It's been pretty good product. There have been some blowouts for sure, but been a pretty good product. I wanted to ask you, before we dive into those other things we talked about, what's your latest take from NFL free agency and from the moves that have already happened?
Yeah, kind of a slower day today. A little breath for everybody, unless you're a big Darius Slayton fan. It's definitely interesting. I think that the Jets are sort of the number one talking point, as they should be, and spoke a little bit about this the last 2 days on the slate, but worth talking about again, I think. When you're looking to bet Super Bowl odds at this point, and with, we're now a couple days into free agency, we still haven't gotten to the draft, obviously, and that can change a lot of things, but we've at least gotten through a big chunk of the offseason at this point, as opposed to making some futures bets in like February. But the Jets number just seems crazy to me. And I think everything they've done is positive. But, you know, I said on Tuesday at the time they were 16-1.
Yep.
And I was saying then that number is already factoring in Aaron Rodgers being on this roster, even though he's not technically on this roster. And still on Wednesday, despite getting a more definitive sort of sense that Aaron Rodgers will be a Jet at some point, still not technically on the Jets roster. And yet the number is now 14-1. And it just feels like when this trade actually happens, it might move to 10-1, despite the fact that this number is already very much accounting for the fact that Rodgers is going to be on this team. So I just think this is one of those classic things in betting, especially futures, where sometimes you just have to swallow your pride and go, I missed it. I missed my chance to bet this. And obviously you can still take the Jets at 14-1. You can still take them at 12-1 if this moves again. But I think the value was betting this a couple weeks back, because I just don't think there's anything left here.
I'm going to try and make a cross sports comparison to this, but it's the opposite.
Okay.
So trying to remember now. Give me a minute. I think it was, for this season, NBA, right? I think we were together doing this, and you and LaMarca were on the same side here. You had interest in taking the Nets to win the championship when there was chit chat about Kevin Durant possibly being moved, but at the end of the day, he wasn't. Now, of course, he has been since, but I'm talking preseason. You had the point being, when they found out, when Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving had their meeting with Marks, Joe Tsai, go down the list, and then we found out we're going to stick it out. We're going to make it work. The moment my point being is you guys both had a take that you're better off taking the Nets now because of the lack of confidence that they would be able to make a move.
Yeah.
But the point is, like anything, it's a really, I guess, a bad way of explaining it. You got the best of the number is all I'm trying to say. If you took the Nets at the time of all that chatter, well, everyone's like, well, Phoenix is the favorite to get them. Boston was in the chit chat at the time. I'm trying to think of another team that may have been in the mix for Kevin Durant. I know Phoenix was the team.
Toronto was highly involved in those talks too.
Toronto. Yeah. So at the time, with all that going on, there was value in taking the Nets, presuming that no one could get a deal done because the compensation wasn't right. Durant putting it out there, it then ties the hands of the Nets to get the best compensation. This is, in fact, I wonder, but it seems like this is a little different. This isn't the NFL. When you've got a guy like Jordan Love, it feels like the Packers are like, no, we're playing Jordan Love. If we have to delay this as long as possible, we will you don't have to come to training camp, preseason. Aaron, stay home. Then we won't move you if we don't get the appropriate deal. So it's a long way of saying you got to get the best of the deal. I think when the initial rumors or reporting started coming out on the Jets to land Rodgers, you could have got 25-1 and that ship has sailed, as you said.
Exactly. And I think, if you want a real-time example of this, like right now, the Ravens are 25-1 because there is such a groundswell of conversation surrounding their starting quarterback position and whether or not Lamar Jackson wants to be in Baltimore anymore. And, even though I think we've all kind of come to terms with the fact that he's probably going to stay a Raven just because of whether you want to call it a league-wide conspiracy or whether you just want to say it's a bunch of teams being somewhat skeptical of an athletic quarterback who uses his legs and maybe not wanting to pay that aging curve. I think right now, there's a little bit of value with the Ravens if you think Lamar is just going to be their starting quarterback next season, because
I like it. This is a good example to tie into the Durant. Okay. I tried to give you the reverse of that, but this is good. I like where you're going with this.
But you were right with the Nets too. I mean, the Nets this past offseason, at one point they were, I believe, the second shortest odds to win the NBA championship. And then there were the rumors about Durant, and suddenly they fall to like 40-1. And then Durant doesn't get traded and they're back up to 12-1 the next day. So these things move really quickly. And again, you're not always going to get the best line, but with these slow burning situations, like we've seen with the Jets, it just feels like any bit of value has already been wrung out here.
Do you think it could work? Just like take out the drama from a football standpoint. If, what if there's a hair across the what for Aaron Rodgers going into the season for 1 year? Are they appealing, the Jets?
I think they could definitely win. Aaron Rodgers had a really weird 2022 season. I think that's putting it lightly. But at the same time, when we're kind of attempting to figure out if there's some bounce back potential, especially with these older players, you look for a reason to justify some of the struggles. And look, it might just be he's getting old. That's probably the most likely answer for some of the struggles we saw last season.
Yeah. But
he also was dealing with a thumb issue for a majority of the middle part of that season. Particularly, I think he injured it in the London game. And he said towards the start of December, mid-December, that he was feeling the best he'd felt all season, that thumb in particular. And suddenly the Packers offense looks better than it had for the entirety of the season before it. So I think there's reasons to be cautiously optimistic that a guy who's won MVP twice in the last 3 seasons might still have something in the tank. The Jets are obviously a very good roster. They built a great roster around the quarterback position. And I think we could all see last season that they were just a quarterback away. My only hesitation, and again, this goes back to why I'd be hesitant to bet the Jets at this current number, is the AFC is just, it's like a generational quarterback situation in the AFC right now. Like it's pretty clear why of the teams with shorter odds to win the Super Bowl, 3 are in the AFC, and it's the Bills, it's the Chiefs, and it's the Bengals. And I think that's almost discrediting the Chargers. I like bringing in Kellen Moore. I think that could really have an impact on just how good their offense is this season and kind of allow Staley to really just focus on that defense. I think it's discrediting the Jaguars, who have a really easy path to winning their division. It's not hyperbole to think that, Trevor Lawrence could just take that next step, that big leap. Like the leap we generally see a quarterback take from his rookie year to his sophomore year, that year 2 to year 3 jump with someone who we basically just throw out the rookie season because of all the shenanigans that was surrounding the Jacksonville franchise at that time. And then even to some extent, the Dolphins. I mean, there's a lot of questions with Tua, obviously, but this is a team that has gone out and vastly improved its defense. They brought in Vic Fangio. They were a playoff team last season. I just think there's a lot of really good teams in the AFC. And we haven't even talked about the Ravens in that grouping of teams. We haven't even mentioned like a possibility of a Broncos bounce back. But when I look at the Jets, I see a very, very good roster. I do have questions about Nathaniel Hackett. Like maybe he's the reason that Aaron Rodgers signs there. I'll give you that. But his track record of play calling is abysmal. And nothing that took place last season in Denver makes me overly confident that that's a guy I want controlling my offense. So I think there are still some holes to poke here. I just think the Bengals and the Chiefs are better, like without question, than the Jets, regardless of who's playing quarterback for them next season. So that's why, again, like maybe pump the brakes a little bit if you didn't get in on this 2 weeks ago.
Jets this season play, of course, they play their division, which I don't think I have to rattle off, but they get Kansas City at home. So Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert at home, Chargers, Jalen Hurts and the Eagles at home, Texans, Falcons. Okay. Commanders. Those are their home opponents. They go on the road this year to Denver, which if they could get their act together, tough place to play, the Denver Broncos, but okay. They got to go to Vegas. So again, AFC West, they got the Cowboys, the Giants, Cleveland with a full season of Deshaun Watson. That is never mind the young quarterback landscape, but the schedule is not friendly either. NFC East and AFC West, which I felt this past year, those two divisions were pretty, I mean, the NFC East, I think they all kind of flourished because of the lack of really, really good teams in the conference. So you could make that case really for any division in the NFC. But the AFC West,
I think definitively the NFC East is like the best division in the NFC because you've got the stability of the Eagles and the Cowboys. Like, I just think those are 2 of the 4 best teams in the NFC on anyone's list. And then you might have the Giants as in that top 5 too. So I just think there's more stability in the NFC East than there is in any other division in that conference, especially now that, like, you could make the case the Lions and the Vikings are two very good teams, but if you're leading with the Lions, that really says a lot about the state of the NFC right now.
All right, let's shift gears to the NBA. We have about 15, 20 minutes remaining in the program. Unless you have anything else NFL related, is a sleeper team that you let kind of like under the radar, looking good to you in free agency?
I've just said it before. I know Matt has really pumped up the tires of the Bears. And I like that.
Where's the number now? Let me just look. Plus 5,000 hasn't moved all that much. Okay.
I think it was 70. Yeah. But I've also said many times
their conference odds have moved too. So that the conference odds, I'm pretty sure, were 40-1.
Yep.
A month, I think, right when they came out, or it stayed steady before we got any news. And
I believe they're one of the 10 most bet future props on the DraftKings Sportsbook currently in the NFL.
I think you are correct.
Also, I've said this a lot, and I just talked about them, but the Jaguars. I think if you're looking for a team that's in that like mid-tier range to really take a step, I think the Jaguars, just again, based solely on the path to the playoffs, I just don't see a team that's going to be competing with them in the AFC South. I guess we did get a couple rumors yesterday that maybe Lamar Jackson could be headed to the Colts. And I know we talked about that last week, is like the last possibility I could see of a team taking him away from Baltimore. So you can maybe kind of like put that in the back of your mind. But aside from that, and I think that's a pretty unlikely event, I think the Jaguars are just doing a cakewalk to the AFC South crown this year.
Mm-hmm. And those odds up on the DraftKings Sportsbook are pretty significant. Oh, minus 140. That's still not a bad number, I feel like, to get the Jags. But why is that so short?
I guess they're just still the Jaguars.
This is true.
The Titans also, like, we discredit the Titans a lot, but they tend to just win games. They win ugly. Now, they've let a lot of their team go. They're
always hurt. I feel like they got really beat up from COVID. The COVID year, they had the most guys out of any team, the whole league. I'm pretty sure that's right. You lost AJ Brown. 2021, they were the 1 seed, so they were good. And then the drop off was you lost Brown, and they thought they could plug and play. And Tannehill was just, it wasn't pretty. But to your point, they play a sloppy Sunday night game against Kansas City. And Malik Willis he wasn't the reason they were staying in the game, that their defense, their run game, no question. But then to your point, like, they could win any week because Vrabel, I guess, just gets the most out of his players.
Yeah, he's really good at making the best of what he has. I think their defense was a little sketchy down the stretch of the season. David Long, their middle linebacker, was dealing with injuries at that point. He's now not on the team because he left in free agency. So there are questions here, obviously. I know there's been some buzz about, like, will Derrick Henry be a Tennessee Titan by the time September rolls around? Like, those are questions we're hearing a lot as well. So I just think there's so much negativity surrounding these. I guess there's not negativity surrounding Houston, but everyone just knows what Houston is. Like, we're all like, cool, you guys are on the right path, but you're not going to be winning this season. So I just think the Jaguars are far and away the best team in that division. I think Doug Peterson is just a heck of a coach, and I really respect what he's done.
Okay, let's go to the NBA. I didn't name names in terms of, I didn't name names really at all. Contenders, TV network people. If you like the NBA, you know. But what do you know that this old MVP award is flipped? And Gary, and when we talk about things like this, I'm of the opinion, let's give it to you from a betting perspective. How the market has moved. Embiid's now the favorite at minus 110. Before the Cavs game last night, in which the Sixers were trailing 70-57 at Cleveland, Embiid was still putting up his numbers. It's a marquee spot, national TV game. In one breath, we're going to talk about the Sixers and how hard their schedule was out of the break, yada, yada. Well, the other side of that argument is if you capitalize and win some of those games with eyeballs all on you, and your best player puts up numbers and you win those games, and that's going to bode well for Joel Embiid, and that has been the case.
Yeah.
Other narratives have contributed, possibly, but again, that's not for our interest. I mean, I'm interested in the market. What do you make of the market shift? Embiid has now flipped to the favorite, about even money, minus 110. And then there's Jokic at plus 150. I'm pretty sure, if you look across the landscape of books, Jokic was plus 170, or pardon me, Jokic was minus 130, Embiid was plus 170, Giannis was creeping up. Now the top two have flipped. What do you think? What do you make of it?
I mean, it's really interesting because, like you said, the last 2 weeks, this has been a pretty monumental switch. I came into this season pretty dead set, like almost to the point of being absolutely sure that there was nothing Nikola Jokic could do to win a third consecutive MVP. Like, it's just so hard with these.
Last guy to do it was Larry Bird, right? In the 80s?
Yeah.
Yep.
And, voter fatigue is a real thing. People like picking up on new narratives. People like giving the awards to new people and new stories. And I was positive Jokic couldn't get to the level that he got a couple weeks ago. And again, by every single advanced statistic, he deserves to be the most valuable player in basketball. I think what he's done and what he continues to do offensively, the efficiency numbers, I mean, at his volume of shooting, I believe he's putting up one of the most efficient offensive seasons in the history of the NBA. And he's doing that while also almost averaging a triple-double. Like, he's truly insane. But I do think it's interesting how we're getting like almost the inverse of some of the narratives we got last season, and they're starting to work against Nikola Jokic, because I remember one of the big things, and this is a narrative that a lot of people focus on for MVP across every sport. We always have the discussion of, can you be the MVP if you're not playing for a team that's one of the best in the league? Because what does it mean to be the most valuable guy in the league if you're on a team that's losing? And last season, I remember 76ers fans, time and time again, when Jokic took that award, how can you give it to the guy who's the 6th seed in the West? That doesn't make any sense. But you start looking at the actual record of the Nuggets and the record of the 76ers, and the Eastern Conference is weaker than the Western Conference, and they basically had the same record. It's just the 76ers happened to use that to get, what were they, the 2 seed, the 3 seed last year? I don't even remember. I think they were 3 seed.
That sounds right. Go ahead.
But now you've got these two teams both with 46 wins, and you'll have Nuggets fans be like, well, he did it. They're now the number 1 seed in the West. Like, what do you have to say now? And the Western Conference is bad this year. Like, it's just sort of funny how you can kind of just turn these things around and stick them right back in the faces of people who made these remarks last season. Because I think Jokic, if you ask me who do I think is the most valuable player in the league, I would still say Jokic. But momentum is real when it comes to this kind of stuff. And we are running out of games. And you mentioned it. The 76ers schedule coming out of the All-Star break was exceedingly difficult. Their final 10, 11 games are very easy. And it really feels like Embiid's about to put up some ridiculous numbers, because this means something to him too. Like, I think Embiid is going to want to go out there and drop 40 a night and try to take this award with all he's talked about this award the last couple seasons.
You have all-time greats, too, that have been vocal about it. And that's, again, my point. When these guys play on national TV, your TNTs, your ESPNs, they have the halftime show, the full countdown shows. They're talking about it. They're talking about the award. They're talking about the steam he's picked up. So the stretch coming out of the break, Memphis, Boston, they beat Memphis, lost to Boston. Celtics, I mean, I'm not sure. Yeah, Celtics have their number, okay? They can't beat the Celtics. And that game against Boston, if I remember correctly, I'm thinking of the road game before the break. Never mind. The game. That was the game in Philly where Tatum hit the buzzer beater. That's what I'm thinking of.
Right. Yeah.
They split with Miami, but you beat the Bucks on the road. And that started their little win streak here. They've won 6 in a row. You beat Cleveland on the road. That's a big win to get some separation from 4 and 3. And right now, Philly is the 3 seed. And like you said, they're scheduled now. They got through the gauntlet. They're still in the mix to possibly win the conference come playoff time. They have 3 more national TV spots: Dallas, Boston, Miami. And folks, just in case to take you back through the timeline here, a week ago now, maybe 7 or 8 days ago, Jokic was minus 400 to win this award. It's incredible. And I think what you're saying too is a good point. The downside for Jokic is the 1 seed is locked up. So there's nothing Jokic can do between now and the end of the season to say, well, here come the Nuggets. No, the Nuggets are established. They're there. So never mind the new toy in the toy box argument. Now it's the toy within the toy box. Like
it's like every race in the Fast and Furious franchise.
Oh, I love this.
Nikola Jokic has already used his NOS. Joel Embiid, we're coming down to the wire. He's still got that tank of NOS in his car. And he lives his life a quarter mile at a time. You know he does. So
wow.
Again,
just made me so happy.
The momentum thing in sports, like that's a whole other conversation. And there are people who love it, people who hate it. But like this is a narrative award and there's momentum in narratives. And you're right. Like this is picking up steam for Embiid. And I almost feel like it's going to be more about Embiid doing something to mess this up than Jokic being able to do something to prove he's still the MVP. Because again, like he put up like a 30, 15, and 12 triple-double in one of their losses earlier this week. Like it's not his fault they lost to the Spurs. He was great. But we're getting to the point where, you know, the media builds these guys up and inevitably people start looking for reasons to dislike a player. And it seems like Jokic has kind of hit that patch of the NBA media cycle right now.
This is some of your finest work. Embiid still has NOS left in the car and he's kind of unscrewing the cork a little bit. Kind of maybe already. I mean, look, he's scored 30 in every game in the month of March.
Yeah, had that huge buzzer beater a couple nights back. Like he's having the moments.
Without a doubt. 36 and 18, come from behind win on the road, national TV. That's going to help. It's going to help. Okay, so I'll leave you with this, then we'll do some baseball before we go. What do you think is going to happen? Would you play, if you had to play it, is there still value in Embiid at even money?
I think so. Because I really think, like jokes aside and bad analogies aside, I think what we're saying is really important here. Jokic has played his hand. Like he can't play better. He can't be more efficient. The Nuggets can't get a better seed in the West. Like what's left for him to do to take this back? I just don't, I feel like this has been decided this week. And again, there's 3.5 weeks left in the season.
Yep.
Embiid's not the most healthy guy in the world. Maybe he gets hurt and the entire context of this conversation changes, but barring that, I really just think this, I also don't know like how much this means to Jokic. If I'm being perfectly honest, I think if you ask Nikola Jokic, like, would you rather just maintain the 1 seed and be going into the playoffs, the best chance to win the NBA title this season?
Right. He's got a playoff problem. Yeah.
I think obviously Embiid also wants to win an NBA title, but goodness, does Embiid want to win MVP?
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And if he's nicked up, he'll play. For Jokic, what he's had to hear, first round exit after first round exit. They've got most of their guys back. Murray's coming back from that injury. They're picking up steam as a team, or at least there's going to be some pressure. Okay, you're the 1 seed in the West. Everyone else in the West stinks. There's chit chat. I'm not saying I agree with this, but all right, well, whoever comes out of the play-in, if it's the Lakers or if Golden State falls to the 8 somehow, the Nuggets, they're getting blasted in the first round. They're not going to make it out. That's the narrative right now surrounding Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. And just,
he's staring down that Dirk narrative, like, you know, really sad, stoic, stone-faced Dirk accepting his MVP award after the 1 seed Mavericks have lost to the We Believe Warriors. Like that's all there right now. Those ghosts are very present currently.
I hope the NBA has, I'm not sure if they do. I would imagine they do. I could be wrong, but like the flex capability, these guys face each other at the end of the month. Philly goes to Denver Monday, March. It's a Monday night game. NBA TV's carrying the game. That would be fascinating. It is fun. So as long as both teams remain hot, and for Philly, Charlotte, Indiana, Chicago twice, they start their trip at Golden State, then Phoenix, then Denver. So those are 2 tough games before the Denver game. But if they're both like, I'll put it to you like this, if the numbers that we read now on the DraftKings Sportsbook are about the same going in, that could be a statement kind of game, a turn the tables kind of game, and then that could determine it too. if they're neck
I
and
guess
neck.
that would be it. That's the one card Jokic has left, is just beat the brakes off of Embiid head to head in that game.
And you're built, and the flip side of that is if the Sixers go into Denver, which has been a hard place to win all year, their home record it's historic. Golden State would tell you that they're a little more historic than that, but Denver's got an unbelievable road record. If they lose at home to Embiid, I think that's a wrap. That's a wrap by the end of the month. Real quick, baseball. What would you like to share from a best ball perspective? Then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, best ball drafts currently up and running on the DraftKings lobby. Really fun format. We're trying it out this year for the first time. For a lot of you guys who like the most fun part of MLB fantasy is doing the draft and you hate setting your lineups every day, best ball is for you. Really just one draft and set it and forget it. It's great. I've got a bunch of articles up right now on the DraftKings, what do we call our site now? DraftKings Nation. DraftKings Nation is what we call our site now. Did want to point out quickly, just one guy I love in this format, because basically what we've done is eliminated most positions. It's just pitchers, outfielders, and infielders. In the infield, Pete Alonso, man, he's going as like the seventh or eighth infielder off the board right now. I think there's a case to be made that he should be the number one infielder taken in this format. It's not like standard 5x5 leagues where you need stolen base potential from some of these guys. It's all about power. It rewards power specifically. And Alonso is someone who, since he came into the league in 2019, leads the league in home runs, leads the league in RBIs in full seasons. So not counting the COVID year in 2020, he's played at least 159 games in all 3 full seasons he's had at the MLB level. I just don't think they come more consistent than Pete Alonso. And I think this best ball format was designed almost exclusively for him to thrive. So keep that in mind when you're doing your drafts.
And I just got the big pool right now that's available on DraftKings: 3 pitchers, 3 infielders, 3 outfield, and you get 11 bench, which again, it's not really a bench, but you get what I'm trying to say. So there's the big contest that's available if you'd like to explore best ball with the season approaching. 2 weeks from today.
2 weeks away.
2 weeks from today, opening day in Major League Baseball. Okay, good stuff. We packed a lot in there in the last 35 minutes. For Gary and Thorne, thanks to Eamon and Daniel getting us up and running tonight. I'm excited about this this MVP thing. I am so proud of you in that Nas analogy. Like I'm not going to steal it, but I would keep that one.
You can have it if you want.
I mean, if you watch the Fast and Furious movies, a lot of people steal stuff.
DVD players usually.
Yeah. And it fits this award because just when you think someone's dead and out of the race, they come back to life in the Fast and Furious as well. One last ride or die for MVP in the NBA. All right, Gary, and good stuff. You all have a great rest of your night. And the sweat comes your way tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We're on YouTube, also on Twitch, and live at DK Live, DraftKings Nation on Twitter. Have a great night.